right, folks. Welcome, everybody, once again to Irish Sports Daily Power Hour. I am your host, Mike Frank, here with Jamie Uyeyama. We have Greg Vlamong also producing the show as usual. It's Happy Football Day, Jamie. I'm excited. Football's finally underway. You've been to some practices. We're going to talk about that here in a minute, and a lot of stuff about the fall camp. Before we do, I wanted to mention a few things. The first thing being, it's a great time to sign up for irishsportsdaily.com. If you are not a member of irishsportsdaily.com, you can go to the front page and click on the front page there. There's a story about our special, which is buy one, get one free. So you buy a month of Irish Sports Daily, you get a second month free, and you can view all of our premium content. We've had a lot of great content. Talk about a story Jamie wrote today here shortly as well. And there's just a lot of great stuff happening right now. Obviously, there's recruiting going on. Elijah Golden is going to make his announcement later this week, and of course there'll be 2027 recruiting going on, and I'm sure that there'll still be some 2026 stuff that happens as the year goes on. So great time to sign up for Irish Sports Daily. Go to the front page, find that story, and sign up today for the special. Also, if you're listening on the show via podcast, you can also find us on YouTube. Go search for Irish Sports Daily, and you can watch the show live. You can watch the video. Greg does a great job of oftentimes bringing up video if we're talking about prospects, photos, all that type of stuff. It's I think, a little more enjoyable way to watch the show and deal with it. And so hopefully you'll check that out. Once you get there, if you would please share or like the videos, and also subscribe to the channel. That helps us out greatly. But also we'd appreciate it if you would take the content and share it with your other Notre Dame fans. If you have family and friends that you know that are Notre Dame fans, send the content to them and tell them, hey, you should check out this show. It'll help us grow our channel, which helps us greatly. So we'd greatly appreciate that if you do that. Also, before we get going, Greg posts here. We've already reached 10,000 subscribers last week. Thanks, everybody, for that. And I wanted to mention our first sponsor, which is ESQ Clothing. This episode's brought to you by ESQ, founded by ND alum Ge Wang, and Chicago's go-to for the best custom suits, shirts, and sport coats. As Notre Dame reloads for the season, now's the time to refresh your wardrobe and add the perfect suit, sport coat, tuxedo, or casual jacket for fall. ESQ master tailors combine next-level craftsmanship with the finest fabrics to deliver a fit that's built just for you. Now with showrooms in both downtown Chicago and Winnetka, book your custom fitting and step into confidence with Chicago's finest. Mention ISD at your appointment and receive 10% off your entire purchase. You can find them once again at esqclothing.com. And we have a new sponsor that we're going to bring in. Every time we have a sponsor, we bring them on the show just to kind of talk to us a little bit. We're bringing on Todd Hill, and he is putting together a big pickleball thing with a bunch of Notre Dame fans in South Bend. It's actually in Mishawaka, but he is involved with H2 Pickleball, and he and a couple other fellow Notre Dame alums, Jack Gibbs and Will Howells, who's a top 10 pickleball pro player, they're all getting together, and they're trying to create a fun event or fun events for Notre Dame games, and also throughout the season playing pickleball. So Todd, just wanted to join the show and just kind of give us a brief overview of what you're trying to accomplish here with H2 and getting a bunch of ND fans together.
Well, thanks, Mike. We're proud to be a sponsor of the show. What we're trying to do is H2 Pickleball, as you mentioned. We've teamed with a couple fellow alums. And really what we're trying to do is connect and engage with indie clubs and fans to really enhance that experience. And we've had some outreach to indie clubs thus far. I've reached out to about 50 of them, and I've heard back from 20 already who want to be involved. So very pleased with the response on that end. And to borrow a phrase from Coach Freeman, we're trying to elevate the fan experience through pickleball. And you'll see most of our events will be organized around game weekends. The first one will be the Purdue weekend. And that Thursday and Friday before, we'll have a pickleball tournament called the Indy Pickleballooza 2 tournament. And it's rather unique because the top 4 finishers on Thursday will advance to the medal rounds on Friday. We've rented out the Steppen Center on the campus of Notre Dame. We will install 2 professional pickleball courts, and we'll have the medal rounds there. We're also engaging in conversations with several former student athletes for an exhibition match and other Football Friday activities there at the Steppen Center that Friday before the Purdue game. Also, the Syracuse game, we're going to have Will Howes, who you mentioned is a top 10 pickleball pro. He's going to be running clinics that Friday before the Syracuse game. And not only do we do events, but we also will have discounts for Crew League members. I mentioned the Syracuse game. We've reached out to the Notre Dame ticket office. We have a promotion code for the Syracuse game, so you can get lower bowl tickets for roughly about 20% off. So you'll be part of that as the Crew League. And also, any self-respecting Notre Dame pickleballer might want to consider something like these, right? So,
oh, wow. Yeah, awesome.
We have these. Also will be part of the discount, and they're Notre Dame licensed. And then, obviously, if you're in town for the game, you can come over to our facility in Mishawaka, and we'll give you a discounted drop-in rate for that. You can join. There's no cost to join. It's a digital club. The best way is if you're a pickleballer and you already have a Duper account, you can look us up. It's the Indie Pickleball Crew League, or just email me, Todd at h2pickleball1word.com, and I'll get you set up. So I'm ready to talk some football now, Mike.
Yeah, well, this is going to be an exciting season, but I think it's an interesting concept, and getting people all across the country to kind of get together with their common thing, which is Notre Dame football, but also all Notre Dame sports. But just getting everybody to come across and come into town, and they have like-minded people that they can play with. And by the way, those paddles are awesome, man. I'm gonna have to get some of those. Those are pretty cool. But Todd, ultimately, what are you hoping to accomplish with this? What is your ultimate goal? What would you like to really accomplish throughout all of this?
I would really it's really about this connection and engagement and really enhancing the experience. The idea actually originated from the Notre Dame athletics department. And it's a way, hey, we have football. We're all grouped together and we have this affinity for football. What are some other ways we can continue to engage or enhance the football experience? And we also basketball, hockey, whatever. So we will team with the athletics department for other events going forward. And one thing that I did fail to mention is most of the events, particularly the Purdue Pickleballooza, 20% of those proceeds will go to our student athletes through the Rockne Athletics Fund. So as we get up and running, it's not only great experiences for our fans, but we'll give back to our student athletes through the fund. That's our goal.
Will you have a tracking system to where people who are heavily into this can say, okay, well, there's some guy from the Maryland club that looks like he's pretty good. I'd like to play that guy. Or is there a way to kind of...
That's exactly this digital club. We have that there, and it has a leaderboard. So you'll see all the rankings, and that's the idea, right? So, hey, I'm going to Seattle, Washington. I want to see other Notre Dame pickleballers. Let me look them up. That's the long-term goal.
Okay. All right. Todd, once again, how do they contact you, to get rolling on this thing?
Yeah, so the best way is through email, and that's Todd at h2pickleball.com. And you can go to our website to h2pickleball.com.
All right. Thanks, Todd, for coming on the show. We will talk to you. And thanks again for being a member of ISD for so long. You told me you've been a member for a long time, and we greatly appreciate that as well.
Oh, absolutely. Looking forward to the show.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Todd, for coming on. We appreciate it, man. All right, Yama. First of all, those paddles looked awesome, man. I want a couple of those. They looked sweet.
I think I know another Todd who's probably going to buy those paddles.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You happen to be in his house right now.
Yeah.
All right. So Yama, you're there in South Bend, and you've had a chance to look at a lot of practices. You've had a chance to kind of interview, talk to different players, talk to different coaches. Everybody's going to have a lot of questions about what to expect. And of course, the first thing's going to be about the quarterback battle. Everybody wants to know what's going to happen there. And look, I know everybody would love to know that. I would love to know that, but I don't think that's going to be decided anytime soon. I still think we probably got another week before we start to really hear anything on that. And there'll be, I'm sure, a couple scrimmages. I wouldn't be surprised if there was one maybe yesterday. We weren't allowed to be there, of course, but my guess is there's probably going to be 2 or 3 before they close fall camp, before we kind of really get an understanding. But from what you've seen so far, I mean, do you think there's anything we can take from that, from the quarterback battle? I know a lot of people are, oh boy, CJ Carr threw a number of interceptions. Minchie threw one. There's been this craziness of people, why is CJ Carr throwing and not stretching with the team? All this kind of drama that people want to create. But to me, I think Mike Denbrock said it best when he said, look, we're trying to put people in very difficult situations right away, and we want to see how they react. And I think it's obvious that neither quarterback, at least from what we saw initially, reacted all that well. But the most important thing is what he and Gino Guidugli said afterwards is, it's not that they reacted poorly, it's what do they do the next time we put them in that situation? Do they do the same thing? Because if they do, then we have a problem. If they learn from that mistake and now are playing better, that's the whole point of doing this. So I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts of, what can we really read into this at this point?
Yeah, I think it's too early to read anything into any of the things from day one. I think if people recall last year on day one of camp, Ryan Leonard didn't have a great day. I mean, Steve Angeli didn't have a great day either. Like, that's typical of any camp, especially when you're going against a defense like Notre Dame's and the secondary they have. The quarterback's not going to have a great day the first day. There's things with offense that takes a little bit longer to kind of connect in terms of like timing of routes, like depth, everything. Dealing with pressure when you've been throwing against air all summer, right? Like all of that kind of stuff. I think that is just kind of bound to happen on those things. So I wouldn't read too much into, those picks on the first day. It is like basically how they react to it. And I think one of the things that stood out to me about the first day was, one, because I've been to a lot of like day one of Notre Dame camp over the last 10 years, that was the most 11 on 11. So like team that they've done at any time on a first day, which is great. Yeah. Like, and obviously that is because you got a quarterback battle and they're putting those guys into situations, because even if you could do 7 on 7, and I'm not saying that 7 on 7 isn't a good thing. It is a good thing, and it's a good thing to work on. It's not the same as going against when there's like an actual rush there. And obviously there was no pads on that first day, so that changes everything too, right? So and also like the menu, you're going to expand the offense just as the defense is going to expand what they're doing in terms of pressures and stuff. And there was a lot of things on the first day where they weren't picking up the blitz very well, which is normal. It's very normal. So I think that the other thing that stood out to me was that after CJ Carr, so he threw 2 picks in 5 plays to Tate Johnson, made a couple of great plays there. And they were both like, the first one was definitely like a really regrettable, like there's no way he should have thrown it. And then the second one, it probably wasn't it was a great play by Johnson, but it was a ball he shouldn't have thrown either. But then, Minchie saw that, and there are plays that I saw, Minchie kind of force some things in the spring. Well, he saw Carr throw those picks, and then he escaped the rush, got outside. Normally, maybe he tries to, throw something really tight, and he threw it away. And you know what? Those were the right plays, right? And so there's going to be like a yin and yang and a back and forth, and they have to kind of learn those things, which is going to happen during the season too, right? Like you have to learn from it as well. And they have to learn exactly like, hey, this is what I can get away with, and this is what I can't, or these are the guys I can trust. Like, 2 of those picks were throws to Jaden Greathouse, right? And it wasn't on him. It was like there was, the safety both times, Tate Johnson and Adon Schuler, they were robbing, the play, right? So they weren't directly covering him. They were guys kind of like a rover there in the middle who jumped in front of it. But they're throwing that ball to Jaden Greathouse because they trusted, like, well, Greathouse is going to come down with it, right? And you got to learn, like, yeah, you might trust that guy, but I got to trust this read here. And there's all of that kind of like give and take with it. I don't think there's anything, and I know there was a bunch of people who asked questions that are, when we get into questions later, but like, who looks better now? What do you think? It's impossible to say, like, which guy is better now. All I know, and then from what I've heard and stuff, is like, it is like a real competition. Like, it is not decided. There isn't anyone who, and I would say, like, maybe before we heard, like, Carr's leading, but then we've heard from other sources that said, like, no, Minchie's really got a shot, and there are people who think that Minchie are going to win it. So I think you just got to let it play out. Like Gino Gaduli said, after the second day of practice, they only need to make a decision as soon as they start Miami prep. And that's still a couple weeks from now. So I wouldn't say that there's anything imminent.
Yeah. I think some good news on the injury situation. I think, things, and I can't speak for you, but on just reading and hearing all the stuff that I saw and heard, you got to feel a little bit better about it. I don't think we know anything about Charles Jugasaw at this point, but when you look at what you saw with Botelho, you see what's going on with Boubacar, some of these others, like nagging injuries and things that happened in the spring. It seems like everybody's pretty close. Cooper Flanagan might be one that is going to be a while. I don't think that, Botelho probably won't start or play, the first game. Maybe he will. I don't know. But it just seems like things are a little bit better than we were hoping coming in. And that's encouraging. Your thoughts here?
I think very encouraging. And I think it's not that big of a surprise when it comes to Boubacar because, they said he was going to be ready for the beginning of fall camp. And as I kind of expected that they were going to kind of be careful about it because they don't want to obviously get anything when you push too fast, too hard. It doesn't matter. He's got to be ready for game one. That's all that matters. You just want to get him to this point where he's ready to play in week one. And guess what? He's doing a lot already. And to me, he looks exactly like the same kind of guy that he was. So that's like athletically. And I think that's really, really encouraging. And with Patel, like he's so much further ahead than I think anyone really expected. They have to kind of like hold him back from doing things, but he's always checking. There's always, a training staff person who's there working with him. Fred Hale, who's, one of the assistant strength coaches. He's always there working with Botelho, off to the side, but he's also doing stuff within, the defensive line group and doing and repping stuff there too. So he's coming off a major knee injury as well. And he looks fantastic in terms of like, it does not look like he had that injury. And he looks really good. And I was a little worried because he was bigger too. He's 260 pounds. That's what he was like a couple years ago. And he didn't move the same that he did, in 2024. I mean, he looks like the guy who is in 2024 in terms of his movement and all that. So I think that's exciting. And everything I've seen from the guys that, you kind of expected to be back, that is really exciting. And I mean, Botelho, obviously they're not going to want to push him to get him injured, but the fact that he's doing stuff already, like he can punch and do some things, they're protective of it, but still he does some things in terms of like punching with his pec. I have to say he's got to be way ahead of schedule of where they thought he'd be.
Yeah, especially if you're not going to let him punch the sled unless, you're feeling pretty good about the stability of his pectoral muscle, which, is obviously something that he injured. So, moving on, we were talking about the quarterback situation. And I think one thing that hasn't been mentioned a lot and probably should be, because if there's one way that you can help this quarterback situation out, we need to see a lot less drops than we saw last year as far as the receivers go. There were far, far too many drops. Denbrock was asked about it, on what he's seen so far. And he said, hey, I think we made a lot of progress over the summer. I thought we were better in the spring. I thought we were a little better. even in the summer. So now the hope is we're going to get through fall camp and this becomes something that they don't have to worry about. But I mean, I just think that this was a big problem last year, and we didn't get to see a lot of spring, but we did see some drops, and that was a little bit concerning. First day, I know Matt mentioned there were a few. That's first day, right? I mean, that's usually what happens on first day, as we've talked about. But Jamie, to me, this is a very important thing. They got to figure this out, and I don't know whether it's more jugs training, more work on it, or what. But you shouldn't have as many drops as they had last year. Your thoughts here?
No, they shouldn't. I think one of the things though is that Bo Collins was a guy, and he had problems with drops before when he was at Clemson, and a lot of his like concentration stuff. He isn't on the team anymore, so that's a thing. Malachi Fields has a track record of having very good hands and being very consistent there. So I think that's like a big difference. When you're trading in your like starting boundary for a guy who's a lot more consistent. And I think with Will Pauling and Jordan Faison were the guys that last season, Pauling obviously at Wisconsin and Faison for Notre Dame, those guys had problems with drops last year, but they didn't have it before. It wasn't so. Maybe it's just a 1 year anomaly, right? So I haven't seen Pauling drop a lot of balls. Like he wasn't the guy in the spring that was, the main culprit. A lot of it was young guys, to be honest, in the spring.
Sure.
And then Faison, I haven't seen him. There was a couple ones where I was like, I guess you could count them as drops, but they weren't good throws. Like it wasn't like they were, I don't know if you count them as drops. Right. So, I wouldn't say, I don't think what I've seen, hasn't been a big problem so far, but you're never going to know until you get into the games. And it's going to be on specifically those two, because Greathouse is just so reliable, right? Like he has probably maybe the best hands, I think, of like any Notre Dame receiver in quite a while. So like, yeah, Greg just showed on the clip there a Faison, like, that was a bad throw. Like it was not, I wouldn't put it on him. Right. So, I think they're going to be okay. And it'll just be whether or not Faison can kind of get to the level of consistency that he was at before.
All right. By the way, Jamie, you had a great article today. They've talked a lot about potentially using a two-back type of look. And when you have guys like J.D. Price and Jeremiah Love and Aeneas Williams, who is an outstanding receiver as well, we've seen Jabron Payne become a better receiver. Kedron Young looked like he was a pretty solid receiver in high school as well. These guys can catch the football, and they're also some of the best weapons you have. And in today's article that you put together, you kind of explained and showed what that may look like through video clips and why this is important. And Coach Sider, the running backs coach, also made an interesting point that I don't think a lot of people think about. And he said, hey, my experience in that set is, even going back to my days at West Virginia, it's a problem for the defense, because how do you defend it? Do you play a nickel defense? If you play a base defense with three linebackers on the field, now we can motion a guy out and we've got an advantage. And it's about what it's going to give us on an advantage to win. And I think, some of the things that you showed in your video kind of shows that as well. But I do think it's something that could be something we see a little bit more. And that, when you got these kind of athletes, you got to find a way to get them the ball, Jamie. Your thoughts here on this?
Yeah. I mean, I think it just makes sense because they're loaded in the backfield. When you have, probably the best 1-2 punch in college football, and then you also have maybe your 3, 4, 5 are as good as like everybody else. Maybe even your number 6 guys, probably would be a number 3 on most teams. Like, I think you got to take advantage of it. And like we're talking about, if they aren't getting what they want out of the receivers in terms of catching the ball, they got a lot of these backs who catch the ball really well. So I think that it opens up some things. I love what Coach Sider said about the matchup issues that it presents. I think that's very real. I thought that Notre Dame in recent years, with Tommy Rees in 2021, in 2022. Jared Parker in 2023 did a little bit of it too, where they did some like 2-back power against Ohio State. With Kyron Williams was like obviously like the peak of what they could do with it, because he was so good in terms of being a receiver, and he could be like a go-to guy on third down. And I think they could do a lot of that with Jeremiah Love. They could do a lot of that with Aeneas Williams. Like you can get obviously like Price matched up on a linebacker, and I saw him like, really look great. Actually, he ran a great pivot route against Jalen Sneed in practice the other day. And the backs, all of the backs look good. Like Payne can catch. Like Young is 240 pounds, but he doesn't move like a guy who's 240 pounds laterally. Nolan James has got good hand. He used to be a receiver in high school, right? So all of these things you can do in the passing game, if you get those guys on backers, you're going to win most of the time. And there's all these other things you can do in the running game with it. I think Penn State, one of the things that they did that they had success against Notre Dame in that game against Notre Dame last year in the Orange Bowl was when they went 2-back, right? And sometimes they would, be like in split gun where they had the 2 backs beside Drew Aller when he was in shotgun, but they would motion a guy out a lot. They'd bring like Nick Singleton in motion. He scored off of like a jet motion play. They faked one to Katron Allen and hit Singleton in the flat on another one. Like all that kind of stuff is there. There's so much you could do RPO game with it. And it's just something that teams don't see on a regular basis most of the time, because most teams don't have the backs that Notre Dame does. And just in general too, that's not where things have gone in football. Like 11 personnel is like everyone. It's like over 50% of the time. That's like FBS football is everyone's in 11 personnel, which is 1 back, 1 tight end, and 3 receivers. If you had a back there and you can do different things with him and you can motion them out, you can motion either of those guys out. There's just a lot of matchups you can do there. And I think Mike Denbrock is one of the best in the country at finding matchups and motioning guys out to get the matchups that he wants, to testing things out when he sees something, a certain look, and then getting it later in the game. I think he's great at that too. So to me, it's exciting. And then on the first day, I don't think we'd be talking about as much if just Sider gave that answer and we were just kind of being hypothetical. On the first day, they ran a lot of 20 personnel, which is 2 backs and no tight end. Like there was no tight end, it was 3 receivers there. So you're basically, and they were motioning out, Love a lot of times there. That's basically like 10 personnel. You basically have 4 receivers. That's something that, a lot of teams can't deal with. And even if you're a nickel, you might be in a bad spot there against because a backer will have to go against it. We saw Aeneas Williams just cook that linebacker Kalen King against Penn State. So to me, I'm excited about it. I don't think people shouldn't think like, oh, this is going to be like base of what Notre Dame does or anything like that. But, I would expect some wrinkles every game that they would do something with it.
There's been a lot of discussion and there's been a lot of commentary about Chris Ash, and there's lip service and then there's things that I think really kind of point to proof. And what I'm saying is a lot of people have said, well, why change the defense? Why do anything different with the defense? And, Chris Ash has said since he's got here, we're not changing the defense. We're not doing anything too drastically different. And I think what really stood out to me in some of his comments were really kind of tells that tale. And they basically asked him about learning the defense. And he said, well, when I first got here, I evaluated everything and tried to make some sense of it by myself. I made a list of questions. Why do you do this? Why do you do this? Why do you do this? Why is this called out? Why do you adjust this way? Just learn. And he talks about he had to learn the defense himself. And Marcus Freeman, that's something that he wanted. And so we've heard that that's what he spent a lot of time. A lot of people say, well, why didn't you hear a lot of Chris Ash out on the recruiting trail? And it was because, one, he's learning your personnel because he doesn't know it. What can these guys do? And then 2, he's learning the actual defense. And then he, talks about, hey, this is not my defense. This is the Notre Dame defense, and there's a certain style that we're going to play with, and that's the only thing that matters. It's not about the call. It's not about the scheme. It's about the mindset of the players, how fast and how violent they play. And so just reading those comments, Jamie, I think that's the kind of proof that you're looking for. That, I don't think that they would spend a bunch of time with him kind of learning the defense and kind of asking, why are you guys doing this? Why are you doing that? Unless that's really what we're going to see. So I think that should give a lot of people confidence that there's probably not going to be much changed in the defense. There may be some things they do differently. I believe him when he says that, hey, we'll probably play a little bit more zone than we did in the past. And I think you have to, and we saw the reason in that Ohio State game as to why you want to do that. But you also have to be able to play it too. You have to be effective at it. There was a reason Notre Dame didn't play it as much, is because they weren't as effective at it. So, but I think just reading the comments from Chris Ash in his interview session, that's what stood out to me the most. He talked about specific players. He's not going to give anything that way. That's just not him or their style. But I do think it does kind of, hammer home the idea that, hey, there's not much going to change here. And I think that's a good thing. I do think it's a good thing. It's important because the players themselves won't have as much to learn that way. And when you got a good thing going, there's no reason to kind of change. And so I'm excited about that. Your thoughts on that quickly, and then I want to get to a few positions as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think he said it already in the spring, and he reiterated it too, right? If it's not broke, why would they try to fix it? And I think the reason he kind of gave the answer, talking about, like, he was asking these questions about these different things too, was because, one of the mantras of Marcus Freeman is challenge everything, right? And that's one of the reasons why I think Notre Dame has really, like, gone light years in the last few years in terms of just all these different things on the field, off the field, and how things have changed, was because Marcus Freeman has challenged things and is consistently evolving into what he thinks will help them win and be the most successful. And I think that's kind of exactly what you kind of want, where someone's coming in and asking why, but not coming in and telling them, like, this is why we got to do this, right? There's a big difference between that. And I completely agree with you, Mike. I think everything he said there, and everything I've heard, frankly, too, is like, they are very much going to be a similar defense. There's obviously going to be different wrinkles with it, but that's why he's hired. Like, he's hired to bring in these other wrinkles too. So I think the defense is going to be awesome. So I'm excited.
I'm going to put you on the spot, Yama. Who wins that job opposite Schuler at the safety position?
I'm going to say right now, and I know there's so much like Tay Johnson hype, but I really think that it's going to be Luke Talek who wins it. Just, it might not stay that way, but I'm talking about coming out of camp, because I think right now, and it always changes, and it's why, like a fall camp depth chart means nothing. But right now, Tay Johnson was consistently with the twos when we saw. I mean, we obviously didn't see too much, but what we saw, he was consistently with the twos. And I think part of that is because Tay Johnson, for all the playmaking he does and how exciting he is, there's still things within his game that he needs to, like, be on his P's and Q's, because, they talked about it, Ash talked about, like, the safety's last line of defense, right? You can't give up those big plays. And that's what truly made Xavier Watts great. He was a playmaker, but he was so sound, assignment sound in everything he did. Like, he wasn't getting beat because of mentally. There was nothing there that where he's getting beat mentally. And especially in his last season, he was just so on point with everything technically that he just played at such a high level because of it. And he was so smart. And it went beyond instinct, because he always had good instincts, but then it became recognition where he saw things. And I think Tay Johnson has outstanding instincts, but there's times where you need to kind of play within yourself. There's also times when, he was where they were doing one-on-ones versus tight ends. He got yelled at a little bit because he didn't play good technique, and he got beat deep by Ty Washington down the field. And there's just things there that I think fundamentally you have to be, he's just got to be on a little bit higher. I'm not saying he's not going to get there. He could, but if you're going to ask me today, just based on what I've seen and kind of how they push, one, I think if they're getting on Jay Johnson, that means, hey, they want this guy to start. Like they want him to be that guy. But I also think that like it might not happen right away. There's or it'll be a split or something early.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if Talic started. It really wouldn't, for the reasons you mentioned. Especially because I think Miami's going to try and run the ball quite a bit. That's what they're going to do. We're going to find out, but I think that Notre Dame's going to have to shut down the run in order to try and make it difficult for Miami in that first game. I will say, I, like you, I believe that as time goes on, you're going to see more and more Tay Johnson, and I think he'll take that job certainly by the end of the year. That's my prediction. I guess we'll see what happens. All right.
I mean, I agree with that.
All right. Yama, you took a look at interior D line. You looked at the rotation. We've talked about quickness and getting to the quarterback and how important that is. But to me, what I don't know is the ability to stop the run. And that's a concern for me because I do think Gabe Rubio's pretty good at it, but I don't think that that's been Jason Onye's strength, right? I don't think that that's been his strength. And Heinisch, that's not really his strength, although he's better at it than people give him credit for. And Dawson was pretty good in the past, but that's my one little concern here after kind of seeing how you feeling about that.
Well, I mean, it's I can't really judge just based off of what they were, with the full practice where he said they weren't in pad. So it's like, I'm not going to overreact to anything I saw in that first day. And obviously you're not going to, have success. Guys are getting touched off. You don't know how it looks there, but I think it is a question. I will say, I think Gabe Rubio, this is easily the best he's looked physically, which is unsurprising, but he carries that weight a lot better than he had. Like, he's 320 pounds and he carries it really, really well. I think he's going to be an elite level run defender this year. I mean, he's been really good the last couple of years. But I would agree too with Onye. I think that is something that's basically is the difference between him. Like, you got to do this to be a player that starts, or you're a guy who comes in. And that's the big key for Onye. There's a level of consistency there. And I mean, it's his fifth year. Obviously he missed, a good chunk of last year, dealing with his mental health, but still he's got to play at a really, really higher level. So, I think Dawson is a good run defender. Like, I liked what I saw from him. I also think he's a guy who's perfect for like when they're doing like games and stunts against the run inside early. Like, he's really, really good at that. I also think that's another way too where Heinisch probably doesn't get enough credit because he is very, very good laterally. But I think that's why it's kind of like open to see like who can be those guys if they're going to play teams that are really, really run heavy. Who's going to be there? And that's going to mean like Armel Mukam, who's like another guy kind of like coming up. He's with the top group there too. Can he be a guy who's like that shows the level of consistency to play there? I think some of the other guys in terms of like Elijah Hughes and Sean Seviano, to me, they're like a little bit on the fringe of that. There's the top 5 and those guys are like 6, 7 after that. So it's going to depend, right? Like, can those other guys kind of jump up? And what do you kind of see from Onye kind of going forward? Because Onye to me is like a big key. He's like one of these guys that if he takes a step up in every way, and I think he's really taken a big step up in terms of his pass rush already, but if he can be a more consistent run defender, I mean, that honestly, I think that changes. Like, the defense is already going to be at a high level. I mean, that would put them at an even different level.
If you are Marcus Freeman, you're now in year 4, and you're trying to figure out how do you get this group motivated? How do you get their mindset right? Now, I'm sure there's a bitter taste in their mouth from the national championship game, but I think that only goes so far, right? I think there's some guys who that will mean a lot to. There's others who have put that long past their memory, and they're just, happy-go-lucky guys, and now it's a matter of motivating them. I think so much of it depends on leadership, and not just leadership in the coaches, but certainly leadership amongst the players, and who is going to be those leaders, who's going to be pushing that. But as the puppet master, Marcus Freeman has to figure out, how do I get these guys? And I love the fact in the past that Marcus Freeman met with his captains constantly about, hey, how do we do this? What problems are you hearing in the locker rooms? What are you hearing about this, that? But if you're the puppet master now heading into this season, year 4, there's huge expectations on you. How do you get their mindset right? Because you got 2 very difficult games right out of the gate, and you got a young quarterback. You got to protect him as much as you can. And this is where you need leadership probably more than any time, especially for this particular team. So, I think we know, like, a Drake Bowen's going to be a leader. We know that. Jaden Grayhouse probably going to be a leader. Eli's probably going to be a leader. Obviously Jay Love and JD Price. There's guys there, but D-line, who's that going to be? Obviously Adon Schuler's going to be a leader, but Gray and Leonard Moore too. How do you do this? How do you handle this?
Everything I've seen with Marcus Freeman is just, like, in terms of his messaging, has been, like, on point in terms of what, like, gets through to the players. And I think it's so different when I think about, like, say 2013, after Notre Dame went to that the 2012 national championship game. There was the Frozen Five that happened that year. There was Brian Kelly, like, flirting with the Philadelphia Eagles. There were a lot of guys who got a lot of hype and maybe kind of went to their head. And I think, I'm not to say that there aren't guys who are getting hyped up. There's plenty of guys getting hyped up there. But, like, when I just see the way when I see the way the best guys in the team practice, that just makes me think that I don't think they're going to have any problems with hunger, because, I'm watching special teams drills, and they're doing, like, a special teams tackling circuit thing. And I see Christian Gray and Leonard Moore, 2 starting corners. That's just an opportunity for those guys. Like, how much special teams are those guys going to actually play? Probably not very much. They set the standard. They were, like, incredibly intense, the level that they were practicing after that. And that makes everybody else practice at that level. And I think with linebacker, like, all 4 of those main 4 guys practice at a certain level that it brings it up for all of those guys. And the defensive line, I think, probably when I was watching them, just, like, going through Indy, and it's not to say that they weren't already, like, practicing at a really, like, fine attention to detail, but I just see so much of that where they're just demand so much of it. And Joe Rudolph really, like, absolutely demands it of the offensive line guys. And because they have now, even though they're young as a group, as a whole, like, the room, you still got 3 guys in Shrouth, Craig, and Emil Wagner that are 4th-year guys that are returning starters. Not even mentioning just Knapp or anything like that too, as a returning starter, but, like, guys that are going into their 4th year in the program. And there's just so many guys that really care, and they have, like, incredible work ethic. When you find out, like, how many guys are actually film junkies. And I think that is something that probably doesn't get talked about enough, is that Notre Dame has done such a good job of identifying guys, not just better athletes. And it's night and day compared to what it was even a few years ago, just depth throughout the roster, just size, athleticism, but guys who just love football. Like, there's just not a lot of guys out there that don't, like, you can tell they love football, that they want to get out there and get after it. And honestly, it makes even those, like, 4 periods where you don't even see that much, it makes even that good to watch. Like, when it maybe not was the best in some other years.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, we're going to get to some questions from customers, ISD customers. The first one I'd mentioned, hey, we don't know who's going to start at quarterback. Of course, the first question is, since you don't know who the starter will be, who do you think the backup quarterback will be? I know
love
two
that.
of them. I know two of them, and that's going to be Tyler Buckner and Blake Abert. How's that? They're going to
That's
back
the right
up.
answer. That's the right
That's
answer.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. New coaches sometimes result in shakeups of the depth chart. Just going by Sider's recent comments, it seems he's extremely high on Kedron Young. Can you foresee Young overtaking Williams? I'd be surprised, but I do think that he likes Kedron Young quite a bit. I think I don't know. I think the real question is, can Jabron Payne take over Aeneas Williams' job? Aeneas Williams, if you want to talk about a dog, I mean, that's a guy who this is very, very important to. And somebody's going to have to really play well to take his third down rule. They just are. He's the best in blitz pickup. He's a nasty kid, and it means more to him than his mentality is Kyron Williams, and he's a lot bigger than Kyron Williams. So, or I guess I don't know if he is now, but he was certainly at the time. So, any thoughts there from you, Jamie?
Well, I think one thing, because probably a lot of people saw that there was like a lot of stuff that Sider said about Kedron Young. I mean, part of that is the guys who are there's a lot of guys writing stories on Kedron Young, so they ask more questions about him than they ask about even like Jeremiah Love or Aeneas Williams, because he's an unknown. So I think, not to say that he isn't deserving of praise, but when you see that, you're like, whoa, he really talked about him a lot. It's like, it's not like he brought it up on his own, right? Like, guys are asking him. So I think that's part of it. I also think Kedron Young, I do think he's going to find a role. And man, he carries that 240 pounds. Well, Mike, he does not look like he's got an ounce of fat on him. He doesn't look like, the bus was, big, but he was a different body composition.
Yes.
Kedron is quite a bit different. He's more rocked up than Audric Estime was, but I think one of the things is like he's just different than Aeneas Williams. So maybe he would take like carries as like the third back if they were like comes to it, like they get one of these injuries, it's like the next guy in. I could see that, but I don't think he's going to take that third down role, and that's probably going to be more of like, well, how much are they going to use Love, Jabron Payne? Like it's probably going to be between those guys.
All right, guys, want to know from what we've seen, who do we think is going to be the surprise offensive lineman? Knapp was last year. It's way too early. I mean, they haven't hit anybody yet. I mean, we haven't even seen them in pads yet. It's just, and I know everybody wants answers to these questions, and we'd love to bring them to you, but it's too early until they actually get into pads and they're actually playing. It's hard to know. And I think depth charts later in the week will give you a better understanding of where things are, whether we actually get to see that. I've always had the sneaking suspicion that a lot of coaches will line people up by the way that they want it to look for the media and then change it once the actual media is gone and they're doing their thing. I have a feeling that happens sometimes too. So it's just too early to say. On a recent Hit and Hustle, there was discussion on how to spread snaps between so many players, specifically the linebacker, if I'm remembering correctly. What I'm wondering is we're probably going to have more of an emphasis on the passing game this year, which tends to extend games, lead to more plays overall. Do you think we'll have a noticeably more plays per game this season, and it might make it easier to work more players into the game? Your thoughts, Jamie?
No, I don't think there's going to be noticeably. Like, I think there might be more emphasis on the downfield passing game, but I don't think it's going to be like, wow, all of a sudden they were like a, whatever it was, 58% run, that they're going to be like, well, now it's going to be 50-50. I mean, they still have Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price and all those backs we talked about. Maybe they won't have as much quarterback run game, but I think how that changes is probably the backs get more, like, and they're still going to have some quarterback run game too. So I just think that's going to be like the bread and butter of Notre Dame's team is going to be running the football, and you'd be kind of almost stupid to be like, we don't want to give more carries to these guys. So I don't think it's going to be noticeable in terms of what it would change in terms of plays per game. I don't see that happening.
Another guy says, I've seen several ND fans use Riley Leonard's rushing ability last year, along with ND success, as a reason why Minchie should be QB1. Riley was an awesome runner, but I think it was his leadership, competitive edge, blah, blah, blah. Do you think Riley's skill set and play style elevated ND skill position players last year, or was it a hindrance to their potential? That's the first question. I would say I think he elevated Notre Dame's offense because he had that ability, and also just his mental toughness. I think he was a great leader. And I think that Notre Dame's big weakness last year was wide receiver. And so they needed to run that way. And you follow it up with, should ND be looking to replicate his physical skill set or find a quarterback whose best ability involves passing the football? I mean, I think Mike Jenbrock, if you asked him, he would love to have somebody with Riley's running ability, but also somebody who could throw the ball very well, Jaden Daniels, and more importantly, as well as Daniels says, throw the ball deep downfield. And I know that Denbrock wants to open up this passing game. He wants to get this thing moving to where they're more explosive. They have more options and weapons at wide receiver. And if you do that, that's going to open up the run game even more than it already is. And so, but I think it's important, if you're going to be an elite team that can win national championships, you've got to be able to throw the ball consistently. You got to be able to throw the ball deep. That's what the best players or the best teams do. And I'm pretty sure that that's what they'd love to see. I don't think they're going to just constantly look for a running quarterback. They want to find somebody that needs to or has the ability to get the ball downfield. All right. You all seem to think that Cam Williams has a decent chance to be in the rotation. Does he just need to somehow show the discipline in route running and consistency in catching the ball, or are there just too many other bodies in front of him? I would say it's not just consistency in route running and catching the ball. I think it's just a better understanding of what he's supposed to be doing, what he's seeing out there, what he's reading, what his keys are, things that he needs to do in certain play calls. I think all those things, catching the ball and route running, are certainly important too, and are part of the reason that he isn't out there. But I think it just the biggest overall understanding of what they're trying to accomplish out there when they're doing it. And we've mentioned when he first started, he didn't have a very complicated offense, and I'm not sure he really understood a lot about even coverages and things like that. And so it's kind of an education that he's had to get. The talent has always been there. I just think getting him coached up to what he needs to be is really the thing that needs some addressing. All right. Seems like the off the field operation administrative side of the organization is being built up like never before. What changes that don't get a lot of media attention are making the most difference? What might surprise us or we just not see? I don't know. I think nutrition, is a big part of it. And I think once they get, they're trainable and get everything in place that way, I think that's going to help. I think they've done like the new facility is going to have recovery things that are a little bit different and a little bit better. I think that's going to play a lot. I think that they've elevated, and this doesn't get talked about a lot, Jamie. I think they've also elevated the level of analysts, the level of people that are there to help coach. Sebastian gets talked about a lot as, somebody that is, a star that's rising and should be a great coach down the road. I think that they've really enhanced that part of things. And now there's not necessarily a number that you have to have. They've changed some of the rules in that regard. But I think just being able to attract the very best of the young coaches, and who wouldn't want to coach at Notre Dame? You've got Mike Denbrock, one of the best offensive coordinators in the country to learn under. You've got Chris Ash, who just had Al Golden, who was and they're playing outstanding defense. And Jamie, it's about culture. I mean, it's not just about how do you coach, but how do you do things? What do they do on a day-to-day basis that builds this culture? And how does this coach, this position coach that I'm working for now, working under, how does he get that? How does he get that kind of level? Like if I were a defensive back coach hoping to be a guy I would want to be in Mike Mickens' hip pocket the entire time. And I think because they have good coaches, that's helped them kind of elevate this. Any thoughts you want to add to that?
I think that's such a great point about the analyst part, Mike, because and the changing of the rules, has a lot to do with it, because you can get guys like Sebastian would have been gone under the old rules. He would have gone and had another job somewhere else. Like think of someone like Larry Black, who was an outstanding, like he was in the exact same kind of role that Sebastian was. And now they couldn't keep him because, they wouldn't be able to pay him whatever, they wanted to pay him to stay. So instead of him sticking around, then he goes to Toledo and he there. Now he's at Vandy, right? And he's done a great job there, right? So that's a huge thing. And then I think too, they've just like done a better job of like getting guys like they're like scouting. I think that has been like a main thing, not just like scouting prospects, because that, I mean, absolutely has been, but like Matt Jansen is like a really, really good scout and someone who's done a great job in helping them like prep for teams, and like a lot of like the college scouting they've done. I think they've done like a better job like portals because of that kind of stuff too, which I think has helped. We should probably shout out Alexa Appleman, who's like the nutrition, like you said, like she's had a big difference. And honestly, I think we probably don't emphasize enough the difference between Lauren Landau and when he's come in and compared to Matt Bayless. And it's not like Matt Bayless did a bad job, but there was a need for a change there that I think really mattered, like in terms of just approach. And everything I've heard, like on and off the record, from like players and coaches and everything, like it's been a significant difference, and it's made a big difference. And you can see it physically throughout the roster, because there's a lot of guys who like maybe struggled to put on weight, who needed to put on weight, or struggled to lose, or whatever, or maybe we're getting hurt a little bit too much. And I think that has been one of the hugest difference for Notre Dame.
All right, we will not have time to get through all these. There's just so many of them, and I apologize, but this is an interesting question. Who's the best player ND will face in the regular season? Who do you think, Jamie?
I saw this question. I think that it's a super interesting one. I mean, I don't know if I could just narrow it down to one. I would say Ruben Bain from defensive end for Miami. Like he's got a chance to be like a top 10 pick. He's a stud. He might be the best guy. They don't have, Miami doesn't quite have the three guys that A&M had last year, but Bain is all of like what those top guys were. Like he's a stud. I mean, I would say quarterback Taylor Green from Arkansas is probably one of those guys that just physically, I mean, there's a lot of hot and cold with him, but he's 6'6", 230 and can really run and has got a gun for an arm. So he's maybe the most intriguing. And I would say Makai Lemon from USC at receiver. There you go. Greg had it too. Makai Lemon, to me, I think he was the best receiver they faced last year. He was in the regular season, and no shots don't need Jeremiah Smith to get angry at this, but Makai Lemon I think he's exceptional.
Yeah, all right. I think that those are great answers for sure. All right. If Notre Dame loses a regular season game, which one would be most likely and why? What do you think there, Yama?
I mean, I don't know what would be most likely, because it's just hard to say. Like, I mean, you could just say like Miami or Texas A&M, or like probably Miami, because you're opening on the road and it's a brand new quarterback, and there's that part of it. So yeah, but I feel like that's kind of like a cop-out answer to just say that. I don't know. Like, I guess any kind of like, or at Arkansas, like what's the weather going to be like that game? What's the environment going to be? Like I mentioned, Taylor Green, he's a stud. They do have a lot of like intriguing, like high ceiling guys that could end up being really good for them. So maybe that, I don't know. I mean, out of those things, like those kind of stand out as games like to kind of like circle. I would say like back half of the year, there's just not a lot of games that I think like are super scary, in my opinion.
I'm interested to see what USC does. They got better on defense last year. They got some better players. Offensively, I thought they started to play better, less mistakes. It's going to be interesting with their quarterback. Can he play like he did against Notre Dame, or will he play, or at least most of the Notre Dame game, or will he make the mistakes that he made at the end of the Notre Dame game? But SC could be better than a lot of people think, and they have skilled talent that can hurt you. And their offensive line started improving last year. I still think their offensive line is a little bit suspect. I think their D line's a little bit suspect, but I do think that they're becoming an improving team. And they're back again with. We've talked about having a second year in a defense, second year in an offense. How much of a jump you can make and that type of thing if you have some good coaches. So that could be a more difficult game than people think. Bronx wants to know what I thought on the car solo warm-up routine. I don't think that this is an issue. I know people say you should be lifting or you should be stretching with your team and that type of thing. I'm going to guess that CJ Carr went to Marcus Freeman and said, "Hey, look, I get amped up, right? I get amped up and I need to kind of get in the right headspace that I need to be. Is it okay if I do this?" I'm sure they told the team about it. I'm sure the team is perfectly happy and fine with it. Your job as a coach is to put your players in the best position for them to succeed. And if he feels like this is going to help him mentally and get into the right mindset for the practice, you got to let the guy try and do it and explain it. But I do think you got to try and let the kid do what he feels comfortable with and just see what the results are. And I just think that people read too much into it. And I don't think it's really that big of a deal.
Can I just say something quick on it, Mike?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, like I said, if you agree with you that if the coaches don't think it's a big deal, if the other players don't think it's a big deal, fine. It is weird though. That's why people bring it up, because it's not. Sure. You don't see it.
I've never seen it.
It's very weird that that it happens. It's very weird that he doesn't. It's kind of what a lot of people do a lot of extra stuff to get ready for practice. They come out early and do it. So that's the one thing that I would be like, why not that? I mean, I didn't get a chance to ask him that, but like, he talked with the media after the second practice, but that would be my like only kind of question about it. Because you can't do that and just kind of get that nervous energy out then. And then you go in the stretch lines with your teammates, because guess what? He's not going to be able to do that extra routine before games because there isn't the room. You only get half the field, right?
Yeah. I think it's interesting, usually when we saw that, the only time we saw that is when they were dealing with some sort of injury. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's usually the only time, and I haven't heard anything about that being an issue at all. So, but I agree with you. That's usually the only time we ever saw those types of things happen. Interesting question. When do you think the starting quarterback will be announced, and what date when they like to have that in place do you think that would happen? Well, I think they're going to go after fall camp, certainly. We mentioned, my guess is they'll probably have 3 pretty intense scrimmage sections, or sessions where, they're really trying to evaluate the quarterbacks and this and that. my guess is they'll probably let the team know, and then how soon does it leak out after that? If it's anything based off of what's happened this summer and kind of they may keep this a secret for a while, Jamie. It's been very difficult to get kind of the behind the scenes stuff sometimes. That they've done a really good job of keeping a lot of that behind the curtain, and there's probably no way that they'll be able to keep it all the way up to game time. Everybody will have a pretty good understanding, I would think, certainly by the week of the game. But it there's no reason for Marcus Freeman to announce it, but he may just come out and say it. He may not. Some coaches say it, some don't. But I think the decision has to be made shortly after fall camp, and that's usually with essentially 2 weeks to prepare for your first opponent. So I would guess, in the 2 weeks leading up to it, they'll know who the starter is, and the team will know who the starter is. It's just a matter of will it leak out, and I don't know. I'm sure they'll try and keep it quiet for at least a little while, but my guess is it'll leak out certainly the week before. All right. What's the biggest unknown going into the season besides quarterback? We'll end on that, Jamie. What do you think is the biggest unknown?
To me, it's depth on the offensive line. Like which guys are going to be there. So, there was the question earlier about like, who's the surprise in the O-line? And yeah, the answer is we don't know yet. Cause like at this time last year, Knapp wasn't on that list. Right. And neither was Sam Pendleton. And then both those guys ended up being that. I mean, I remember like the year before, Pat Coogan wasn't seen as someone who was going to start, and then he won the starting guard job. Right. So I wouldn't say that the 5 now, I would probably feel pretty confident that that's going to be the 5, with Sullivan Absher stepping in, but it's going to be like who's, 6, 7, 8 from there. And it's just going to depend on like, well, Gerby Lambert, I mean, he looks massive and moves pretty darn well for his size. Where's he at? Will Black. He's been working at guard. They're looking at guys at guard who everyone would have thought he would have been a tackle. Where is he? Like, is there like another freshman like Matty Augustine or something like that? Matty Augustine looks really good size wise. Like he's made a lot of really nice gains. Like, is he someone like, I'm just throwing names out there, but it just could be somebody we don't know who's surprised, but you want to see like if they run into the same problems that they did last year, which is not likely, but it could happen because they already lost one guy to a freak injury. Who are the next guys?
It's interesting to think because, Sullivan Absher has played a little bit of center. They've looked at him there. So say Craig goes down, do you go with Otting? Do you go with Sullivan Absher? You mentioned, and I think your explanation for the Will Black thing on the site really made a lot of sense in that, chances are he's probably not going to be a tackle right away, but can he play guard? Because that's kind of their big question right now. Until Jugasaw gets back, is who's that next guy in? Who's the next guy? Because who knows whether Jugasaw comes back? Of course he's going to come back, but when he could re-injure it, and you need to know who that next guy is besides Absher. So that's very important. But then you look at Augustine, who has been playing some, started out at right tackle. My understanding is he was third string left tackle.
Yes.
When they lined him up this year. And I think that's interesting because they must feel pretty good. I mean, well, obviously with Gerby back, you can play him at right. But they must feel pretty good about his chances to compete with Styles Prescott there. And so, I think it just depends on which position goes down. I don't think that you have a guarantee of, say Jugasaw comes back and they pull Absher, that if a tackle went down, it would be Absher. If another guard went down, would it be Absher? What if a center went down? So I don't think that that's the case at this point. It could be, based off of what we see in the fall, whether or through fall camp, maybe he is just the best tackle that they have, or maybe he is the best next guy in. But you would hope that Gerby Lambert would elevate to where if something happened to Wagner, that Lambert's the guy in. You would hope that if something happened to Knapp, that it would be one of Prescott or maybe Lambert or maybe even, Augustine. So I do think that you're 100% right. That's the one position we just don't know. I will say they're in a lot better position this year than they were last year. And so that's one of the nice positives about it is we have a pretty good idea who's going to start, and we know one guy is at least a quality backup. Last year, we didn't have any clue how good any of these guys were. And so, well, I guess we kind of knew Wagner was pretty good, and Craig had played okay, in his opportunities. So, and Shrouth, so they'd played okay. So I think that's a big thing. And then I think the unknown too, Jamie, and it still is along the offensive line, is how much of a jump can these guys make? Because again, a lot of these guys really were kind of in their first year. Even a guy like Billy Shrouth, who played some, the previous year really only had 3 starts. It's that full year of getting out there and having those wars and playing against Penn State, playing against Georgia, playing against Ohio
bad
State.
ankle for most of this past year too.
Yeah. How much can you elevate? And, can we see a lot better Billy Shrouth? Can we see a lot better Emil Wagner and a lot better Ashton Craig? I think that's possible. And if we do, look out, so it's going to be fun to watch. I think for me, how much those guys elevate is really going to have an impact on how far this team can go. If those guys can elevate and become better and Knapp, they're going to be very difficult to beat, I think. And it's just a matter of, then can the quarterback do his job? And I've said this before, he doesn't need to be a hero. He doesn't need to be Superman. He just needs to execute the offense and hopefully make some big plays along the way. Anything you want to add before we close down the show?
I think that's just such a great point about, whether or not those guys can elevate, because everybody kind of, just assumes that everyone's coming back and they're like, yeah, they were good, they'll be good again. Like, we don't know that they're not going to be great. And and we've seen that happen with a lot of guys at Notre Dame, right? And
Joe Alt was certainly a lot better player as a sophomore than he was a freshman. He just was.
I think Anthony Knapp is going to be a much better player this year than he was last year. But it'll be like, well, can Shrouth be an All-American if he's healthy and he's got this experience now? Like, those are the kind of things that kind of, make or break, like, how much better the offense can be. It's like people knew that Jeremiah Love was going to be good. I don't think anybody thought, whoa, he's going to be this good right now, but that's what happened. And that's what helped elevate the offense.
All right. Before we get going, I want to mention again, great time to sign up for Irish Sports Daily. Go to the front page, click on the premium section. You'll find an opportunity, if you're not a member, to sign up for our buy one, get one free subscription. If you find us on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel. And also, we'd greatly appreciate it if you'd share the content with your Notre Dame friends and family. That would help us a great deal. Again, thanks for our sponsors. And Yama, I'm gonna see you tomorrow, brother. And we're gonna go. And we're gonna go out and we're gonna get some pizza. I'm excited about that. Unfortunately, we have to see Bucco's. That's the downside of it.
I'm excited to see him.
Well, okay,
maybe you're not. Yeah.
I know I love Bucco's, of course I do. So, but we're gonna go out and have some pizza, and looking forward to seeing you. I haven't seen you in a while, so that is gonna be good. And I also want to say thanks to our good buddy Todd the Mush for letting us stay there in that beautiful yellow place that the Yama's at. Every time we want to say thanks to Todd the Mush for everything. Truly one of the best guys you'll ever meet in life. So thanks again, everybody, for watching and listening to the show. We will be back next week. Both Jamie and I will be home. I'll be back from South Bend, coming back on that Sunday. So looking forward to it, folks. We will talk to you next week on Power Hour.